Hello, this is Burnishing Step 2, which is the bone dry burnish. So here's the piece that I have burnished once at the leather hard stage, and I've let it dry out to bone dry. So all the moisture's gone. Make sure that it's totally bone dry. Leave it out in the sun, put it in your oven with a pilot light. Don't heat it up too much, but make sure it's totally bone dry. You can put it to your cheek if it's not really cold. If it's kind of room temperature, then you're good. So the Navajo wheel clay that I'm using happened to burnish up pretty nicely with one burnish. The top half of this is just a single burnish I did at the leather hard stage. The bottom half I've done the second burnish to, and it is a little bit shinier down here. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You want to use some oil. I'm using avocado oil, but any oil will work. Any kind of cooking oil, olive oil, or baby oil, mineral oil, all that is fine. I think thin oil is the best liquid, so you can spread it on there. And then just, I have it in a little bowl here. You only need a little bit, and you can do it one section at a time. It's hard to do your whole piece without having to reapply. If it dries out more than you want, you just reapply the oil. So I call it drying out because the oil is rehydrating the surface just enough to burnish it. So I'm going to show you there. I'm going to do that section. So it's really slick with oil, shiny. It's not ready yet. You have to wait a few moments for that to soak in. You can actually see it happening there. So it's starting to get kind of dry on the surface, and you want to wait until it's all completely dry. So while that happens, while that soaks in, I'll talk about a couple other things. This is another example of a burnished piece at the leather hard stage that has not dried out to bone dry yet. It's cold to my cheek and it's darker in color. It's burnished pretty well out of one round. What I noticed, every clay is a little different. I used a light bulb was my main burnishing tool, and I used the little stones as well sometimes. And then after I did it with the burnishing tool, I actually went with my finger and did this over the surface. I had never done that before with burnishing, but this clay body tended to come out better after a finger burnish after the stone. It's pretty good burnish, and I'm not sure if the second burnish is going to improve it all that much. Other clay bodies like B-Mix, Soldate, things that you're using possibly at home, definitely benefit from the two-part. So let's see how this goes and how we can compare. So the oil has just about soaked in. There's one little spot there. So that's good. It's ready to burnish. And I'll use my little glass bead. It's the same process to burnish. You just push it in. You don't necessarily need to push real hard. You have to kind of look at it and see how it's going and adjust your pressure accordingly. Yeah, this is working. I can see it getting shinier in the section that I'm burnishing. I'll hold it up for you to see in just a moment here. So, yeah, right there, it's even shinier than it is down here. Not a lot, though, because the first burnish was pretty good. So you can do that. Let's go to the light bulb. Yeah, it's good. Okay, so one thing that could happen that's not good is you might get like a scratch, a dry scratch. You need to put more oil on there. Let it soak in, and then you can burnish out a scratch if you happen to have them, either from the first time or if you get one on there this time around. What you don't want to do is go and like try to burnish it where there's no oil. That'll cause it where you haven't put any oil at all on there to soak in. Don't do it without the oil soak because it will scratch. It's a much higher risk of scratching. You might notice on my piece that I have a section that's not burnished at all, this little sculptural bar in there. And I actually used a knife at the leather hard stage when I was burnishing the first time, and I kind of scraped the surface a little bit just to have a real good contrast between unburnished and burnished. This one I was playing around with that too. So I actually took the knife and just by hand kind of scraped off the top there Then I stuck it in there and I cut away a little bit of clay and scraped it after I burnished, just to play around with a little bit of design beyond the simple burnished surface. Just an option. So that's all there is to it. Get a little oil on there, let it soak in. So if I were doing this whole thing, I would then need to go to the next section here and put the oil on there, let it soak in, and go for it. So don't get too much. I just put more than I needed to. If you put like a lot on there, it just takes forever for it to soak in and dry. And so I gotta wait for that and go for it. So thanks for watching. If you feel like your burnish was like super spot on the first time and it's shiny and you let it get bone dry and it's really shiny, you could even skip this step. Oh yeah, I got one more thing. I almost forgot. There's another thing that you can do as a final step, which is to use a little bit of plastic and burnish again with plastic. And it just gives the final buff. So that's an option for a final one. Cece told me about that, a student in the pottery class. So thanks for that, and go for it.